Imagine you are standing on the threshold of an ordinary day. You're worried about work deadlines, forgetting your keys, or your boss being unhappy with your latest report. Now, imagine that in a split second, the world around you simply ceases to exist. Instead of the sky, a blinding void. Instead of a city, a scorched wasteland. You survive. You do the impossible. You travel hundreds of miles to your hometown, walk into your boss's office, and at the exact moment he tells you that you're crazy and such a thing is impossible, it all happens again. This isn't a plot from a Christopher Nolan film or a script for a post-apocalyptic game. This is the real life of a man named Tsutomu Yamaguchi, the only person officially recognized by the world to have survived 2 nuclear strikes. Today, we go back to 1945 to reconstruct, minute by minute, a chronology of events that science calls impossible. How did one engineer cheat death twice and live to a ripe old age? Get ready. This story will make you rethink the very meaning of the word luck. The last morning of Hiroshima. The summer of 1945. Japan is exhausted by war, but life on the home front continues. A 29-year-old engineer for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Tsutomu Yamaguchi, is finishing a 3-month business trip in Hiroshima. He is young, ambitious, and desperately misses his wife, Hisako, and their young son, Katsutoshi. August 6th was supposed to be the day of his triumphant return home. Tsutomu was already at the station when he suddenly realized he had forgotten his personal seal, or hanko, an essential document in Japan at the time, without which no paperwork could be finalized. He decides to go back to the office. This accident, this forgotten trinket, seemed destined to be his death warrant. Around 8 a.m., Tsutomu walks toward the shipyards. He hears a drone in the sky. He looks up and sees a lone American B-29 bomber flying over the city center. In Hiroshima, they didn't even sound the air raid siren. A single plane wasn't considered a threat. Tsutomu watches as 2 small parachutes detach from the fuselage. At that moment, time slowed down. At 8:15 a.m., the world vanished. It was like the flash of a magnesium flare in a giant camera, Yamaguchi later recalled. He barely had time to dive into a roadside ditch and cover his ears with his fingers. The shockwave literally lifted his body into the air, spun him around, and hurled him dozens of meters into a potato field. When he opened his eyes, there was only darkness. Rising dust and ash had blotted out the sun. Tsutomu felt a searing pain. The entire left side of his body was burned, his eardrums had ruptured, and bloody spots swam before his eyes. The city of Hiroshima, as he knew it, had ceased to exist in just a few seconds. Tsutomu did not panic. Despite his severe injuries, an engineer's instinct forced him to look for a logical way out. He spent the night in an air raid shelter, surrounded by the moans and screams of people who were slowly turning to ash. But one thought drove him. He had to get home to Nagasaki. The next morning, he makes his way to the station through what used to be central streets. He saw rivers choked with bodies and people walking like zombies, not understanding what had happened. The most incredible thing was that the railway service was not completely destroyed. Tsutomu boards a train packed with charred, blinded passengers. This train would later be called the Ghost Train. He spent the entire journey to Nagasaki in a semi-conscious state, clutching his burned arms to his chest. He didn't know yet that he wasn't heading towards safety, but into the epicenter of the second act of a global tragedy. Déjà vu in Nagasaki. On August 8th, Tsutomu arrives in Nagasaki. He is met by his wife, who at first doesn't even recognize her husband in this bandaged, gaunt figure. His skin was black with ash and burns. Any other person would have taken to their bed and stayed there for weeks, but not Yamaguchi. On August 9th, overcoming fever and pain, he puts on clean clothes and goes to the Mitsubishi office to report to management on why he didn't return on time. Around 11 a.m., he is sitting in the office of the company director. The director listens to his story with disbelief. One bomb? Destroyed a city? Tsutomu, you're clearly overworked or mad from shock. That is technically impossible, the boss said. And at that exact second, the office was flooded with that same familiar, deathly white light. "I thought the mushroom cloud had followed me from Hiroshima," Tsutomu recalled. The second atomic bomb, Fat Man, exploded 3 kilometers from his new office. Again the shockwave, again shattered glass and collapsing walls. Tsutomu finds himself on the floor once more. This time, he didn't receive new serious injuries. The building's walls were reinforced. But the psychological blow was crushing. He had survived again. But now he was certain. The world had come to an end. Life against science. After the second blast, Tsutomu developed severe radiation sickness. His hair fell out, his wounds wouldn't heal for weeks, and he vomited constantly. Doctors gave him no chance. In those years, no one knew how to treat radiation. But Yamaguchi kept fighting. Slowly, month after month, his body began to recover. It was a medical miracle. He didn't just survive. He returned to work, raised 2 daughters and a son, and lived a long, productive life. For a long time, he remained silent about his experience. He didn't want to be special against the backdrop of the Japanese people's collective pain. Only at the age of 80 did he decide to speak out. He wrote a memoir and became an activist for nuclear disarmament. In 2006, a documentary titled "Twice Survived" was made about him. He even traveled to New York to speak at the UN. "I have seen hell twice, and I am here to make sure you never see it," he said from the podium. Tsutomu Yamaguchi passed away in 2010 at the age of 93. His story is not just a tale of incredible luck. It is a manifesto of human resilience. We often complain about fate, minor setbacks, and bad days. But remember the engineer from Japan who twice found himself at the center of the most destructive weapon in history and found the strength not just to survive, but to grow old with a smile on his face. Statistics say his life was impossible, but Tsutomu proved that when a person has a purpose, love for family, and a will to live, even atomic energy retreats. Do you think Tsutomu Yamaguchi was the luckiest man on the planet, or the most cursed? Share your thoughts in the comments. Cherish your life, and remember, as long as you are breathing, nothing is impossible. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more gripping stories of real people.